All right, man. I'm back. It's been like 2 weeks. A lot of BS has happened. You know, I don't want to get too much into it, but just know I lost most of my pictures and most of my documents. You know, but anyway, man. And I almost crashed out behind it, but I didn't. So anyway, we back. Goku and DC season 5, episode 2. We about to have the family come out of vacation, so let's go ahead and get into it. But first, as always, shout out to the members, man. John Lane 2016, Pawangari Kutiri Mi Caro, MX, shout out Mexico, OD Demon Wolf 34, and Jason 57835. And if I got some new members, man, I haven't seen it yet. I had to get a new phone too. Like I said, long story, but anyway, let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. So, boom. Garlic Jr. sat back on this obsidian throne, his cackling echoing through the mountain sanctuary like a laughter of death itself. Before him, the holographic projection showed his 4 servants spreading across the globe like a plague of demonic locusts. Spice in Metropolis, vinegar in Gotham, mustard in Star City, salt in Central City. And then they were spreading out as they were going. Each carried vials of the Blackwater mist, each ready to unleash chaos upon an unsuspecting world. At last, Garlic Jr. whispered, his pale green fingers curling into fists. After 4 years of waiting, 4 years of planning, the world will finally know my wrath from my return. The holographic screens flickered to life, showing each city in real time. In Metropolis, Spice stood atop the Daily Planet, releasing a thick cloud of purple-black mist that spread outward like a living organism. In Gotham, Vinegar smashed his vial against the pavement, and the mist began seeping through the streets like a creeping fog of madness. Mustard released his payload over Star City's harbor, the mist mingling with the sea air and drifting inland. Salt cackled as he released his mist into Central City's water supply, the infection spreading through the very infrastructure of the city itself. The Blackwater mist was airborne also after it had been unleashed in vapor clouds, and with the power of my winds, it will overtake the globe, Garlic Jr. observed, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a plan coming to fruition. Those who breathe it directly will be first to fall, their darkest impulses unleashed, their minds consumed by greed and violence. But even those who escape the initial cloud will not be safe. Every bite from an infected host spreads the corruption further. Bite by bite, infection by infection, the entire world will be consumed and will all bend to my will. He leaned forward, his red eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. The heroes will be forced to fight against their own people. They'll have to choose between stopping the infected and saving the innocent. And by the time they realize the true nature of my plan, it'll already be too late. On the screens, the first signs of chaos began to appear. In Metropolis, a businessman suddenly attacked his colleague, screaming about stolen promotions. In Gotham, a group of teenagers turned on each other, their eyes glowing pink with corruption. In Star City, a mother abandoned her child to go and loot a jewelry store. In Central City, police officers turned their weapons on civilian protesters. The infected can't be reasoned with, Garlic Jr. continued, his voice a cruel whisper. And they can't be cured. Not yet. They simply want. They want wealth, power, pleasure, destruction, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. He raised his hand and a holographic like miasma shifted to show the cities from above, swaths of pinks and purples and blacks, corruption spreading like wildfire, consuming everything in their path. Let the pandemonium begin. Barry Allen was enjoying a quiet evening at home, a rare moment of peace in the life of the fastest man alive. He had just finished a late dinner with Iris. The dishes were still soaking in the sink when the first drops of rain began to fall. But as he looked up at the sky, his blood ran cold, as if he was expecting something bad. The rain was black. Barry? Iris called from the living room. Is everything okay? But Barry didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the sky, watching the unnatural liquid descend down like a curtain of darkness. Every instinct screamed at him that something was terribly wrong. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of the corruption, the wrongness of this rain itself. Iris, Get inside, he shouted, already moving. Don't let this touch you. But it was too late. The black rain was already falling across the entire city, seeping through the streets, through the buildings, through the very air itself. Barry could see the first signs of infection spreading. People twitching in the streets, their eyes beginning to glow with that sickly pink hue. I have to warn the others, Barry muttered, his mind racing. I have to tell the League. But he already had soaked it in. Before he could take a single step, the black rain that had landed on his cheek had already absorbed from his skin. The effect was immediate and devastating. Barry's body began to seize up, his muscles convulsing as corruption invaded his system. He could feel it, a darkness creeping through his veins, poisoning his thoughts, twisting his very nature. His eyes widened in horror as he felt his own mind begin to slip away. No, I have to fight it. But the darkness was too strong. Barry Allen, the Flash, the fastest man alive, felt his heroic instincts being consumed by something even darker. His thoughts grew sharper, crueler. Where there had been compassion, now there was a toxic ambition. Where there had been hope, now there was only greed. His body began to twitch involuntarily, his muscles spasming as the corruption began to take hold even further. His eyes, those kind, worn brown eyes, began to glow with an unnatural pink light as a twisted smile spread across his face, replacing the hero's determined expression with something far more sinister. Warn the League, Barry laughed, a laugh that was not his own, but something seemingly darker and crueler. I don't need to warn them. I need to free them from the shackles of the heroics by sharing this gift I have just received. He turned to face his wife, who was staring at him with growing horror, not knowing what was really going on. Iris had seen her husband transformed, and she couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Barry, what's gotten into you? It's time for the Flash to run, he replied, his voice dripping with arrogance. And I've just realized something, Iris. I've been wasting my life playing hero all this time. I've had the power to take whatever I want, and I've been holding back now. And it's time for the heroes to use our powers. Now it's time for the heroes to use our powers for ourselves. He blurred into motion, appearing inches from her face. But first, let me kiss you for good luck. And then he bit into her neck and infected her with the black water mist infection, allowing her to be corrupted as well. The Batcave was a fortress of technology and preparation. Its monitors are tracking threats across the globe, but tonight the screens were overwhelmed with ongoing chaos. It seemed like every major city in the world was experiencing simultaneous outbreaks of violence, reports of looting, assaults, murders, all connected by a common thread. The perpetrators all had one thing in common. Their eyes glowed pink. Bruce Wayne stood at the central console, his cowl raised, his expression unreadable. But beneath the mask, his mind was racing, and analyzing, calculating. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up satellite imagery, atmospheric data, thermal readings. The picture was becoming clearer with every passing second. What the hell is happening out there? Jason Todd demanded, pacing behind his mentor. Every city is going crazy. We should be out there helping them. Batman didn't respond immediately. His eyes were fixed on the data streaming across the screens. His analytical mind was working at maximum capacity. Till finally he spoke. It's the rain. The rain? Jason stopped pacing, his brow furrowing. What are you talking about? The black rain falling across every major population center. Batman zoomed in on a satellite image showing the spread of the infection. I've been analyzing the footage. The victims all exhibited the same pattern of behavior. Violent outbursts, loss of empathy, extreme selfishness, and they all had traces of this purple-black residue on their faces, similar to what's falling from the sky in the infected areas. Jason moved closer to the screen, trying to make sense of the data. Are you saying that this rain is turning people into monsters? I'm saying the rain is a vector for biological, or maybe even some type of magical contaminant. Batman pulled up a chemical analysis of the black water. The substance appears to be airborne, but it's also being transmitted through direct contact, more specifically through bites from infected individuals. This isn't just some bizarre weather anomaly. This seems to be a coordinated attack. Jason slammed his fist on the console. Then why are we still here? We should be out there stopping this before it gets even worse. Because we can't. Batman's voice was cold and clinical. Look at the spread patterns. He highlighted the map on the screen showing the infection progress. The contamination is still airborne. If we go out there now, we risk exposing ourselves and becoming infected. And let's say we put on hazmat suits. Who's to say it won't be able to go through it? We'd be no better than the people we're trying to save in that state. Jason opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. He knew that Batman was right. They had to wait until the mist dissipated before they could act. But waiting was the hardest thing that he had to do. How long? Jason asked, his voice strained. At current dispersal rates, the airborne contamination should clear within a couple hours. Batman's fingers never stopped moving, pulling up schematics and chemical formulas. It's at least an hour until we can deploy. Use that time to prepare, study the symptoms, the transmission vectors, the possible weaknesses. We need to come up with a plan. Jason stared at the screens, at the chaos spreading across the world, at the heroes falling, at the cities burning, and he balled his hands into fists, his nails digging into his palms. And a couple hours, huh? He repeated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. This is going to feel like the longest hours of all time. Batman paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, the cold mask slipped, and Jason could see the weight of the world pressing down on him. The Batcave fell silent as the two prepared and watched, the weight of the disaster pressing down on them. Outside, the world burned, and all they could do was wait. In the upper atmosphere, it was cold and silent, or at least it would be for most people. The vast emptiness of space stretching endlessly above him. Superman had been occupied for the past hours, intercepting a cascade of malfunctioning satellites that had begun falling toward Earth. It took a while catching each piece of debris, carefully redirecting them into stable orbits, ensuring they wouldn't crash into populated areas below. But it was necessary work, the kind of quiet heroism that rarely made any headlines. But he wasn't doing it for the headlines anyway. Now as Clark descended through the clouds towards Metropolis, his super hearing began to pick up on things that were going terribly wrong. Sirens, hundreds of them. Screaming, breaking glass, explosions, gunfire. The sounds of a city tearing itself apart. Lois, he whispered urgently into his communicator. Lois, are you okay? Hey, what's happening down there? Only Static answered. Superman then increased his speed, breaking through the cloud cover to see the nightmare below. Metropolis was burning. Plumes of black smoke rose from dozens of locations across the city. Cars were overturned, storefronts were shattered, and in the streets below he could see people fighting each other. Civilians attacking civilians. Emergency workers overwhelmed. Chaos spreading like wildfire. What in the world? And then a figure rose from the smoke to meet him. The creature was somewhat tall and angular, with light green skin and crimson eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence, and he had white hair that stood straight up as if it were zapped by static, as his yellow cape billowed behind him like a shroud, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was happening. Superman, I presume, Spice said, his voice smooth as silk. So glad you could join us. I was beginning to think you'd abandon your precious city. Superman hovered in place, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the newcomer. Who are you? What have you done to these people? I am Spice, servant of the great Garlic Jr. The green-skinned villain spread his arms wide, gesturing to the chaos below. And as for what I've done, well, I've simply liberated them, freed them from the chains of morality, of compassion, of all those tedious little rules that hold humanity back. You're the one behind this anarchy, Superman's fist clenched, his jaw tightening. This ends now. Tell me how to cure them. Spice laughed. A cruel mocking sound. Cure them? Why would you want to cure them, Superman? Look at them, he gestured, downward where a group of infected civilians were savagely beating each other over a handful of cash. They're finally embracing their true natures. No more pretending. No more self-restraint, just pure, honest desire. Superman ignored the taunt. Reaching out with his enhanced senses, he could hear the infected people below. Their heartbeats were elevated, their breathing erratic, their minds consumed by something primal and savage-like, and he could see the black residue clinging to their skin, the same substance that had fallen from the sky, from his observation. But he had missed it because he had been in the upper atmosphere. I won't let this continue, Superman declared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. I'll find a way to stop you, and I'll save them all. Spice smiled, revealing sharp teeth, seeming like some type of alien vampire. Oh, I'm sure you're going to try. But since you weren't on Earth to be healed by the black water, he produced a small vial of purple-black liquid from his cape. You will receive my master's gift manually. The ancient streets of Kahndaq were usually a place of order, strict, unforgiving, but orderly. Yeah, I decided to go with the kind of like the Dwayne Johnson look. I upgraded Black Adam. I don't know if I'm gonna keep it or not, but the ancient streets of Kahndaq were usually a place of order, strict, unforgiving, but orderly. Black Adam had ruled with an iron fist for years, and the people had learned to respect that authority. But tonight, it was like everything had changed. Piccolo stood atop a sandstone temple with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he watched the chaos unfold below. Citizens were attacking each other in the streets, their eyes glowing with that sickly pink hue. Shopkeepers were looting their own stores. Neighbors were turning on neighbors. All sense of community was like evaporating like morning mist. What is this madness? Piccolo murmured, his voice carrying a note of genuine confusion. He had seen many things, battles, interdimensional beings, alien conquests, but he had never witnessed anything quite like this. The transformation had been almost instantaneous, as if something had simply switched off in their minds. He looked down at his own hands, then up at the sky. The black rain had fallen on Kahndaq, just as it had fallen on every other major city. But Piccolo hadn't even been affected. Neither had Black Adam. They both were standing in the middle of the street when the rain began, yet neither had shown any symptoms of corruption. Magic, Piccolo realized. This rain is some kind of magical corruption, and it's our magical natures that's making us immune. Black Adam descended from the sky, landing beside Piccolo with a thunderous crash. His expression was dark, his fists clenched, his eyes burning with barely contained fury. But unlike the infected citizens below, his eyes remained clear, with no sign of pink corruption that had consumed so many others. If anything, his eyes were glowing with yellow lightning. Piccolo, Black Adam said, his voice a low rumble. You have noticed this chaos as well. It's hard to miss. Piccolo gestured to the streets below, where a group of infected citizens were savagely beating a merchant. The rain did this. Some kind of magical corruption, it appears. It turned the people against each other. Black Adam nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the carnage below. I have seen this before. In ancient times, a sorcerer used similar tactics to destabilize the kingdoms around the world. The people became consumed by their darkest impulses. They forgot loyalty, compassion, duty, and they became basically like intelligent animals. The question is why? Piccolo turned to face Black Adam, his expression unreadable. Why would anyone unleash this on the world? What do they hope to gain? Power, control, maybe revenge. The usual reasons. Black Adam's voice carried a note of disgust. I have no patience for such petty games. Below them, a particular brutal fight broke out between two men who had been friends only hours earlier. They were now beating each other senseless over a fistful of coins. Their eyes were blazing with pink light, and their faces were twisted with hatred. We need to stop this, Piccolo said, his voice carrying a note of urgency. Whatever this is, it's spreading rapidly. If we don't find the source, I will handle the situation here. Black Adam interrupted, his voice brooking no argument. My people are my responsibility. Whatever madness has infected them, I will bring them back to order. He raised his hand and lightning cackled between his fingers. You, Piccolo, go. Find the source of this corruption. Discover who is behind this attack. And when you find them, send word, and I will come. Piccolo studied Black Adam for a moment, his expression unreadable. Very well, Piccolo said, turning toward the sky. I will find the source of this corruption, and I will bring an end to it. He launched himself upward, his cape billowing behind him, his green form disappearing into the dark clouds above. Below him, Kahndaq descended further into chaos, and Black Adam descended into the streets to impose order by force. The world was burning, and somewhere in the shadows, the architect of this catastrophe was laughing. The lookout floated serenely above the clouds, its ancient marble gleaming in the fading sunlight. For millennia, Kami had watched over Earth from this sacred vantage point, guiding heroes, guarding against threats, maintaining the delicate balance between light and darkness itself. But tonight, that peace had been completely shattered. Kami sat at the edge of the lookout with his ancient eyes fixed on the world below him. His normally calm expression was twisted with distress. His hands were trembling slightly as he processed what his divine senses were now telling him. The earth was screaming, millions of voices crying out in pain, confusion, and madness. The black water mist was spreading like a plague, consuming everything in its path, seemingly. I should have seen this coming, Kami whispered, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of regret. I should have sensed his return. I should have warned the heroes, prepared them for this attack. Mr. Popo stood beside his master, his expression unreadable, but his posture betraying deep concern. Master Kami, you cannot blame yourself for this. Garlic Jr.'s power has always been difficult to predict. He was trapped in the dead zone for so long that his energy signatures barely even registered. Until, I am the guardian of Earth, Kami's voice rose, cracking with emotion. It is my sacred duty to protect this world from threats like this, and I have failed. I have grown complacent in my old age, content to watch the heroes do my work, while I sat here in comfort. And now, he gestured to the chaos below, his voice breaking. Now the world is paying for my negligence. Mr. Popo placed a hand on Kami's shoulder. Kami, you cannot carry this burden alone. The heroes of Earth are strong. They will find a way to stop this. They always do. But Kami shook his head, his ancient eyes filling with grief. You don't understand, Popo. This isn't a threat that can be stopped with brute force or clever tactics. This is an attack on the very souls of humanity itself. If left unchecked, the Blackwater Mist will consume everything till there is nothing left to save, till there is no soul to save. He rose to his feet, his robes billowing around him as a new determination filled his ancient frame. I must contact Goku. He needs to know what he's facing. He needs to prepare. Kami, are you certain? Goku's on Themyscira with his family. I know. What you mean you certain? I don't know why I wrote that. Popo, come on, man. The world going to hell. Of course you gotta alert the bro. Why'd I write that? Anyway, I know. Kami's voice hardened with resolve. But Goku hasn't faced impossible odds before. He can do it again. And this time, his eyes blaze with determination. This time I will not stand idly by and simply watch. He raised his hands to the sky, reaching out with his divine senses. Somewhere out there on that island of warriors, a Saiyan father was playing with his children, and Kami was about to shatter that peace. Forgive me, my student, Goku, but the world needs you yet again. The waters of Atlantis had always been pure, crystal clear, and shimmering with bioluminescent life, protected by the ancient magic of the sea. But tonight something dark had seeped into its very depths. The Blackwater Mist was carried by the ocean's currents, and underwater, and it had found its way into the heart of the sunken kingdom. At first the Atlanteans didn't notice. The black rain that had fallen on the surface didn't reach them, and the mist that had infected the land-based cities seemed far away, and they were protected by a dome. But then people that were infected outside of it had made their way back in. All hell was breaking loose, and the mist was carrying in when the gate opened. But the corruption was insidious. It spread through the waters itself, poisoning the very essences of their home. Aquaman stood in the throne room of Atlantis, his trident in his hand, his expression troubled. He had been receiving troubling reports all evening. Skirmishes between citizens, disputes over resources, sudden outbursts of violence that seemed out of character for his usually peaceful people. Other than faction feuds and whatnot. "What is happening to my kingdom?" he murmured, his voice carrying a note of genuine concern. And then he felt it. A coldness began to seep into his veins, a darkness creeping into his very mind. His eyes widened in horror as he realized what was happening. The corruption was spreading to the depths. It was in the water, the very lifeblood of Atlantis. He tried to fight it. He was a king, a hero, a man who had faced countless threats and emerged victorious. He had put everything on the line for all of his actions. He had even lost an arm, saving the planet. But this was different. This wasn't an external enemy he could just punch or stab. This was like something was inside him, poisoning his thoughts and twisting his nature. No, I won't let this happen. I am king. I am the king of Atlantis. I cannot allow myself to fall. But the darkness was just too strong. Aquaman felt his heroic instincts being consumed and replaced by something darker and more primal. His thoughts grew sharper and crueler. Where there had been neutrality, now there was only ambition. Where there had been wisdom, now there was rage. His eyes began to glow, a sickly pink hue that spread across his irises like wildfire. A twisted smile spread across his face, replacing the king's dignified expression with something far more sinister. "My people," Aquaman announced, his voice carrying across the throne room to the assembled Atlanteans. "The surface world have corrupted our waters for too long. They have poisoned our homes and environment, threatened our very existence." The Atlanteans murmured among themselves, their own eyes beginning to glow pink. The infection was spreading rapidly through the kingdom, consuming everyone in its path. "We will not stand for this," Aquaman continued, his voice rising with righteous fury. "We will rise up. We will take to the surface, and we will show these land dwellers what it means to cross Atlantis after all these years." And a roar of approval echoed through the room. It seems like all the selfishness was overridden by their pride, and all of them had a common enemy, which was the surface dweller, and they were about to go to war behind it. A roar of approval echoed through the throne room. Thousands of voices united in their newfound hatred. The Atlantean army began to mobilize, their eyes blazing with pink light, their minds consumed by the desire for conquest. Aquaman raised his trident high, the weapon gleaming with malevolent energy. "To the surface, for Atlantis, for revenge." The kingdom of Atlantis, once a beacon of hope and cooperation, had fallen, and now its king was leading his people to war against the very world they had sworn to protect, and his wife had gathered beside him. Themyscira had never looked more beautiful. The setting sun painted the ancient temples in shades of gold and rose. The Aegean Sea shimmered like liquid sapphire below the cliffs, and the air was filled with the sound of children's laughter. Gohan and Amara had soared through the sky on their new jetpacks, their joy echoing across the island like music. Gohan was still learning his flight patterns, wobbling occasionally as he struggled to maintain control, but Amara was a natural, her movements fluid and confident, her laughter ringing out as she performed loops and dives around her brother. "Come on, Gohan," Amara called, banking into a sharp turn. "You have to be faster than that." "I'm trying," Gohan replied, his voice carrying a note of frustration. "This is harder than it looks." Goku watched from the cliff's edge, his arm wrapped around Diana's waist, his heart swelling with pride. In moments like these, the weight of the world seemed to lift from his very shoulders. The battles, the tragedies, the endless struggles to protect Earth, his drive to become stronger, all of it somewhat faded away, and it was replaced by the simple joy of watching his children grow. "Look at them," Diana said, her voice soft with affection. "They're so happy." "Yeah," Goku agreed, pulling her closer. "I never thought all the battles we've been through would lead us to this moment." Diana smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You've become quite the father, Goku." "Yeah, well, I'm glad I had good parents to show me how it's done. I mean, imagine if I was raised alone in the mountains or something." Diana laughed and said, I don't know. I think you would have still ended up the same pure-hearted man that I fell in love with, despite wherever you were raised. And he laughed and said, maybe. The moment was perfect. The sunset, the children, the love they shared. It was everything Goku had ever wanted. Peace, happiness, and family. And he couldn't wait till he could finally train for strength. Obviously, can't let that boy forget that. And then Kami's voice echoed in his mind. Goku, you must come to the lookout immediately. The world is in grave danger. Goku's body tensed, his protective instincts flaring. Kami, what's happening? Garlic Jr., an old enemy from my past, has returned, Kami explained, his voice strained with urgency. He has unleashed the Blackwater Mist upon the world. It's spreading rapidly, and it corrupts everyone it touches. The heroes are falling. The cities are descending into chaos, and I fear the worst is yet to come. Goku's eyes widened, his mind racing as he processed the information. Garlic Jr.? He had never heard of this guy, but if Kami was concerned, he must be a real problem. And then Goku felt it. A wave of dark energy washing across the world itself, and now it was everywhere. Spreading through the cities, through the oceans, through the very air itself. It was like nothing he had ever sensed before, pure malevolent chaos. Diana, Goku said, his voice suddenly sharp. We need to go. Diana looked at him, concern flickering in her eyes. What is it? Everyone on the earth feels corrupted, and violence is increasing. Goku's fist clenched, his jaw tightening. This Garlic Jr. guy has released something called the Blackwater Mist, and it's corrupting everyone. The whole world is in danger. Amara and Gohan landed beside them, their jetpacks humming softly. They had sensed their father's change in mood and saw his sudden tension. Father? Amara asked, her young voice carrying a note of concern. Is something wrong? Goku knelt to face his children, his expression serious but determined. I need to go to Kami's lookout. There's a danger threatening the world, and I have to help stop it. We're coming too, Amara declared, her chin set with determination. Goku shook his head, a gentle smile touching his lips. Not this time, little one. This is too dangerous. Your mother and I need to face this alone. But, Gohan started to protest. No buts. Goku pulled his children into a tight embrace. You and your sister need to stay here, on Themyscira. It's safe here for now. You're protected. Gohan and Amara exchanged a look, their young faces conflicted, but eventually they nodded. Okay, father, Gohan said quietly. We'll stay, Amara agreed, though her voice carried a hint of disappointment, and her eyes had some type of mischief in them as well. Goku stood and turned to Diana, his expression hardening with resolve. Let's go. They launched into the sky together, leaving Themyscira behind. Around them, the world itself was burning. Above them, the stars were watching, and somewhere in the shadows, Garlic Jr. was laughing. Alright, so the next episode will be Kami's going to break down how it was. We're going to get to a flashback of how Kami was. We're going to learn what happened to the Dragon Balls. We're going to learn how he became Guardian of Earth and all that. I got a good idea for that. It's going to be kind of cool. Let me know what y'all think. And then after that episode, so when we get to episode 4, that's when everything's going to pop off. People are going to be fighting people. We're going to introduce some new heroes, and all that. And the old villain's going to return too. So anyways, I'll catch y'all. Gone. Peace.